So this is where it all began for me in China, sort of. This may just be the most touristy part of Beijing, and it's the place everybody knows to come. It is definitely worth seeing, and it's something that you should check out if it's your first time visiting. But just know that there is so much more to explore, and hopefully I can share a little bit of that with you as I kind of reminisce about 2005. So the corner of this street right here is where I took my first picture in front of the Forbidden City right here in Tian'anmen. It's too bad you can't actually walk all the way up to the corner anymore because they've kind of roped it off, but this is where I saw it for the first time. Jumping on a plane to Beijing in my 20s was a pivotal moment in my life. I didn't realize it at the time, but I would never be the same after that first trip. It was an eye-opening experience that kept me going back year after year, eventually getting a job and meeting my partner there. I'm overwhelmed with memories from my youth whenever I get to visit and enjoy hanging out in different neighborhoods, eating good food, and visiting old friends. This is so cool because this is a line that recently opened here in Beijing. This was never here back when I lived in this city 10 years ago. In fact, they've expanded so much. Well, this is really nice. There is lots of room to sit, lots of seating. Usually some of these cars can be quite busy, but not this one. I am kind of going to a place today though, this a little bit further outside the city center, so probably not a lot of people headed out that way unless they live out there. Definitely not a lot of tourists. It's not every day you can say that you have an entire subway car to yourself. Well, this is my stop, the end of the line, the very last station they built. But it's going to take me to something very, very cool that everybody should come and see while they're in Beijing. So I totally understand why a lot of people visiting Beijing do not come out here, because this is about 10 miles away from the city center. And most people, especially tourists, when they visit, want to go to see the Forbidden City, which is right in the center, or the Great Wall, which is about 2 hours north, which is a little bit hard to get to, but everybody's heard of it. And this bridge, I think outside of China and maybe Japan, a lot of people don't know that much about it. All right, so I made it in here, and this in front of me is the Lugou Bridge. And it is very famous in Chinese history, especially for the Sino-Japanese War, which was basically World War II here in Asia. And it was during Japan's colonial era where they were kind of taking over lots of different places in Asia. I love all these statues here. They really kind of talk about the history of this bridge because this was built back in the 1100s. It is about 800 or 900 years old. Obviously, they've done a lot of renovation work on it since then, and I think it was rebuilt in the 1600s. If you look over there, you can see the new express road that they built, the new highway that goes across the river here, because they used to use this bridge. They're also doing a lot of construction over there, so maybe they're even building another road. And it's so cool to see all the lion statues. There's actually over 500 of them that are individually carved out. On my first trip to China back in 2005, this was one of the first places I saw because I was staying with a friend that lived southwest of the city. So for me, the city center was not even where I was staying. So I got kind of a local perspective right away as soon as I came to visit. Yeah, there's really not a whole lot else out here. So again, you wouldn't even know that you're in the city of Beijing, but you are. It's just that big and that spread out. It's amazing that you can get right up to these statues, almost touch them, but you really shouldn't because these are definitely priceless works of art. There are also some small lights here in front of these little lion statues on the bridge, so I'm guessing that they light this up at night, but I've never actually been over here during that time. Yep, being out here definitely brings back memories of my first visit to China. Even the weather, because they had a lot more pollution back then, so the sky was always hazy and gray. Luckily, this doesn't happen as often anymore, but I guess I just got lucky today. All right, let's see where we are on the subway map over here. When I first came to visit China, the first time, back in 2005, there were only 3 subway lines. There was line 2, which goes in a circle, line 1, and line 13. I believe the first subway line was this line 1 that opened in the 1970s, and then the rest followed. But until 2005, it was still only 3 lines. So between 2005 and 2024, or whatever year it is, they built so many more lines to the point now where they have the second largest subway system in the world, only behind Shanghai. And today I'm taking subway line 1 because it's going to get me to some of the spots I want to check out. What's really interesting about this to me is that this subway stop used to be one of the busiest ones in the entire city because it is Tiananmen. It is the heart of downtown. But because they put new rules in place to visiting the square itself, you have to have a timed entry QR code. It means that the only people stopping here are people that made a reservation in advance. So far, 2 levels of security, and I think I'm coming up to a 3rd. So this is kind of ridiculous to come over to the square. Okay, that was fun. So I did bring a bag with a few cameras in it, and I had to stop there and let them search every inch of it for about 15 minutes before they let me go in. And I think having a few batteries for my camera actually threw them off. I'm not sure why, but this was probably some of the most invasive searching I've ever had. I mean, airports don't even do this. That's too bad because I have a lot of memories of this square. It used to be wide open. There used to be no security. Well, I mean, there was security, but you just walk through or ride your bike across. Everything changed over here in the center of the city at Tiananmen during COVID. That's when they started doing all these checks and kind of shutting the area off. One of the big rationales was to give everyone that comes here a better experience because it won't be as crowded. And I can say the crowds aren't that big right now. So I guess it is keeping a lot of people out. I remember the first time I ever came over here and saw that giant portrait of Mao. And the weather today is about the same as it was back then. Trust me, this is not fog. But usually the weather is nicer. It's too bad it's not on this day when I'm here, but you know, brings back some great memories. Be sure when you're over here to actually walk around and do some other things, like check out some of the statues, the monuments, go to the museum palace. You know, you can even go over to Mao's mausoleum over there and see him laying in rest. One nice thing about the sides of the street here are that you get these trees where you can get some shade. especially when it's really bright and sunny out. It's not too bad today though, thanks to the pollution. It says here it's the National Museum of China. Well, now I've officially walked into the square, and this thing is massive. I mean, it is just one large concrete plaza. The square feels so empty to me. I mean, there are quite a few people, but the last time I came here before they did this, before they instituted the restrictions, you could barely move in the square. I'm realizing that a lot of these monuments, you can't really get that close to them, whereas before when I came here, again, it's been a while, you could actually walk right up to them. So right over there is actually where they have Mao's body laying in state perpetually. Usually they have a line of people queued up to walk in and pay their respects. I've done it once myself, but no line today, so maybe it's just not open. Well, that kind of sums up all of Tiananmen. I've pretty much walked over most of the square, so I'm going to take off. It's starting to get a little bit hot. Sun's coming out a bit. But it is massive. It will take you several hours if you want to do other things while you're here. I would highly recommend coming, though. This has such significance in history for China and the world. So it's a very cool place to see. And just know that you're going to have to go through a lot of security. I would recommend just not bringing anything. No bags, no nothing. Maybe a camera or two, but nothing else. Well, now that we've done Tiananmen, let's get out there and explore more, because there's a lot to see and just not that much time, at least for me, this trip. Yeah, my apartment was literally one of those buildings back in there. Now, I haven't been back to this neighborhood in at least 11 years, maybe even 12. So it's been a long time. It has changed a lot. They have built a lot more buildings here, and it's just much more crowded. It's also a place where not a lot of visitors or foreign visitors come when they're in the city here in Beijing. So I am getting a lot of looks. Probably doesn't help that I'm filming myself. But I'm just gonna walk around and continue what I'm doing and look for my old apartment. I think it's actually right over here on my left-hand side. It was one of these tall buildings here. You can never go home, right? But it is interesting to be in this neighborhood. Again, very, it is central city Beijing. It's not like it's out in the rural areas of the region here, but it feels very, very local. I've made it to a crossing with no lights or anything, so I'm just going to try to do it with other people. Maybe not get myself killed. I'll just try to put this in a bit more geographical context for the city or the region of Beijing, because it is so massive. It is comprised of 16 districts, and the two largest ones here in kind of the central city bit are this area in the west called Haidian, which is where I spent a lot of my time living and working. And then there's the area in the east called Chaoyang, and that one is much more well-known internationally because that's where a lot of the consulates and embassies are, as well as most of the expats live over there. And for a time, I was a bit jealous, and I thought I'd really like to have an apartment on that side of the city because it does seem a lot more fun, a lot more foreigners living there. But in the end, I actually enjoyed living on this side better because it gave me a much more local perspective on living in Beijing, as well as just being in China. And it forced me to learn more of the language. Even though I never got proficient, I was able to handle situations better and be more comfortable around speakers who didn't necessarily know any English whatsoever. And it made me try harder, right? Like I had to really work at it to make friends and to kind of learn new things. All right, finally taking a break and getting some noodles. These beef noodles look amazing. Really hot though right now. And this right here is a typical Beijing drink. Got a little polar bear on it. Really takes me back to my childhood. And of course it's warm. Oh, I'm so excited for this. This is meat on a stick, and in Beijing it's a specialty called chuar. That is so good. I miss that so much. Eating chuar, eating chuar, eating chuar, chuar. I gotta come up with a new song now. This is really cool. They've put this massive dragon sculpture here above this walkway. Definitely wasn't here last time. Okay, so I want to explore the other side of town now really quick before it gets dark here. I was over on the west side for most of the day in Haidian, which is, like I said before, where I lived, where I worked, kind of my home area. But over here on the east side, this is where most of the expats and foreigners live. It's the CBD, Central Business District, and it's really popular, especially for people that want to go out. There's a lot of nightlife, a lot of shopping, a lot of clubs, and again, very English, foreigner friendly, especially if you find yourself living in this city and you've come from abroad. Now I think this side of town is especially interesting for me because it is the section that's changed the most since I first came to Beijing in 2005. I feel like they're constantly building new skyscrapers, new buildings, and I think in part that has to do with the fact it is the business district. It's got all the embassies and the consulates. A lot of the international stuff happens here. So it is a pretty vibrant and thriving area. Well, right behind this barrier here is a building called the Pacific Century Place, and that was one of the original malls here, and it looks like they might even be tearing it down or just renovating it. This might just be me, but I've also always felt this section of town was just a little bit grungier and dirtier than other parts. And I totally blame all the foreigners. You know, bad influence. Now I'm kind of starting to get into more of a busier area, more shopping and some massive new mall complexes. So if you look behind me in all directions, none of these buildings were here back in 2005. There was literally one street that went down, Sanlitun, and that had a bunch of bars on it that were made for expats. And that was it. And then all of a sudden, major construction, and this whole area blew up. Okay, before I take you to all those new crazy buildings, I'm going to show you the one street that is still here from before. And this is it. It has changed a bit though. I think much brighter buildings over here. These were all just little tiny bars. Very seedy. Wow, that is a fancy bar. So why did everything change in this neighborhood? I can tell you exactly and give you the times as well. It was really the Olympics in 2008 is what spurred all this economic development here. Because there had already been foreigners living, again, in this area of the city. This was kind of their zone. They didn't kind of venture off too much, which is why I kind of enjoyed, again, living in a different part of town. But I did come over here a little often, you know, because I'd meet other friends and we'd go out drinking or out to the nightclubs they had. But when they had the Olympics, I think the city really ramped up their efforts to become more friendly and appealing to all the foreigners that were going to end up coming to the city here. And you get all these new places that look amazing. Something else I'll admit right now too is that I rarely ever came over here during the daytime. This really is a nightlife spot. And I would say it's probably the most lively of all of them in the entire city because they have quite a few nightclubs for dancing and so many bars, it's ridiculous. Plus a lot of rooftop bars even. So it just got so much going on here. And, you know, you and your friends want to hang out, you know, you just come here. Sanlitun, everybody knows. I was looking back at some of my older photographs that I took when I was here the first time. And I just noticed that I had one that is this area I'm in right here, but it is a construction zone. Okay, we've done enough of this new shopping stuff. Now I want to walk over and show you one more thing before I call it quits and say, you know, enough with the nostalgia, enough with the 2005. Trying to finish this video up before it gets dark, so I'm going to take you to one more spot here that was one of the first places I saw when I came here, and that is Workers' Stadium. That's really funny. You can see where the new and the old kind of meet right here because you've got those malls and then you've got some of these older apartments. I don't know if this is a new subway they're working on over here or just an existing one that they're redoing the ground on. Okay, I was right. This is a new subway station right here for Workers' Stadium. Now, before Beijing had the Olympics in 2008, Workers' Stadium was their kind of major place where they would do sporting events and concerts, things like that. And I came over here and thought, this is really cool. There was actually 2 nightclubs near it too as well, which made it kind of fun. Mix and Vips. I don't even know if they're still around. They might not be, but I think there's a whole bunch of other nightclubs that have sprung up in the last couple of years too. And there's a stadium across the street. There looks to be a lot of construction going on around it though. I know they actually rebuilt it, I believe last year. I thought it reopened, but maybe it hasn't. I am going to do my very best to get closer to that stadium. Right now the sidewalk's not even open yet. Although I think I might, oh, I think there's an opening I can get in. This is going to be really cool because this is the first time I've seen it since they tore down the old one. This might be about as close as I can get to this stadium because they definitely have not finished it. Although they've made like an entire metro here for it, which was not, none of this existed. I mean, it looks like it's going to be incredible once it opens. Apparently it's going to become a massive park complex. So there's going to be a lake that they're building around it. There's going to be some green space. It's going to have kind of a large concrete plaza as well. So it's going to be pretty incredible. Before it was basically just a stadium on top of a big parking lot with some pretty cool statues. But I think they've saved the statues and they're just putting them up again in new locations around the park. I am kind of excited to see that though once they finish, but probably be a few more years. Who knows? Anyway, thanks so much for joining me today as I took this little walk down memory lane of my first time visiting China and all the things that I remember. It has changed a lot, I'll be honest. I think, again, the big changes came around the time of the Olympics and then COVID. So both of those made this a very, very different city than what it was before. Not necessarily a bad thing. There were some good changes, some things that I don't really care for as well. But that's anywhere, you know, when they change stuff, it's always, you know, good and bad. Anyway, stay safe, healthy, and happy, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Thanks for joining me today. Life's a journey meant to be shared. Remember to always travel with an open heart and an open mind. Enjoy the ride and keep your eyes on the horizon for the next adventure. I'll see you out there.